Okay, so we should be good now. Hey, everybody, we're back. We just had like some kind of technological hiccup or something. Not sure what that was. Talking about the stones, though, yeah, dude, like you're kind of like the crazy cat lady in terms of collecting awesome rocks, right? Like the best crystal collection that I've ever had in life, it was actually a set that you gifted me that I kept secret and safe. That thing is now buried in my backyard in fucking East Knoxville, Tennessee. I just couldn't pack it with. I miss it every day though. Like I greatly appreciated that kit that you had given me. Of it was like 27 different stones, you know.
Yeah. So, but like I was telling you over the phone, is that the best ways to get them are for them to call to you like they did to me, or to be gifted them, and that's when they have like the most powerful energy. That's when they're the most special.
Mm.
Um, so I don't remember if you were able to bring up their properties, because see, that's what I thought was crazy and why I thought it was important that I felt like it would called me into the store. I guess that's where I was saying when it cut off, is that when we were sitting down to eat, Lisa's like, I feel like you were called to that store. And I told her, it's funny that you say that, because I was just thinking that as I'm looking up the metaphysical properties of these stones. And I don't know what called me to them. I was just called to them. And
Well, and also you were
each
like a
one,
stranger in a strange land of, being up in Idaho Springs, which is, like that's a cool place to be. Idaho Springs is always it's a wonderful mountain town, but it's so close to the city that you get the best of both worlds. And the thing about mountain towns in Colorado is that you can't swing a dead cat at somebody that doesn't have a fucking crystal shop. So the first one I pulled up is pink opal, and pink opal is a very powerful crystal when it comes into contact with one's heart. This stone activates and unlocks our heart chakra and imbues one's aura with calming, tranquil vibrations. It is the perfect stone for someone to carry if they are struggling with any sadness, especially that of a broken heart.
and I don't know if it's that one or not, that dealt with healing past trauma, healing um, old hurt. Um,
Mhm.
but also the reason why it resonated with me is because of the Rosicrucian type meditations I've been trying to do, where in the meditation, once you have your heart chakra activated, you have to imagine a green ethereal light that travels from the heart chakra up the spine into your pineal gland. And there's a spot between the pineal and pituitary gland that's known as the cave of Brahma to the Hindus. And it's said that this light from your heart illuminates that cave and illuminates with the rose light that gives you, it's like a more higher spiritual consciousness intuition with your
Yeah.
third eye chakra, in the way that you view the world.
So the
Um,
second one I looked up was the pink fluorite or fluorite. And that is a crystal of forgiveness for both oneself and others. It gently brings pent up resentment and anger to the surface to be dealt with in a loving and dot dot dot. I guess it won't give me the rest of the definition. Um, yeah, so it's interesting that you're so interested following this path of insight and knowledge, and yet everything that calls to you and that you respond to is something that is comforting you. Like you have always never hesitated to confront the hideousness and the dark realities of living day to day, yet you are spoken to and called to resonate with these things like everybody around you is telling you that you are, and they are all very supportive and very soundly emotional sorts of energies.
yeah. So actually, that made me reminded me of something that I want to bring up. I was on the phone today with my brother Brandon. You know Brandon, and
Yeah.
actually, when I was telling him about my crystals and that whole experience I just told right now, he said, "Oh, so you carry trinkets?" And I
Hmm.
said, "No, it's not like that because I understand what they are. I'm not carrying it around like it's some magic rock." Um, I told him more or less to manifest, to put energies out there, and we were made to create. That's why we speak, and our voice is vibration and frequency, which is
Right.
creation. Um, but we're meant to create positively, even though we have the power to create negatively. And like I was explaining to him, all this stuff has a cost energy. It takes energy to do these things. And so, in order to recharge myself, I'm using these objects to recharge myself in certain ways. But I have to charge these objects to use their energy, right? Because you don't want to use the energy, and these are living things too. It's like proof that the earth is alive, that they're creating a living thing, is what crystals are.
Mm.
And um, we as human beings, we when we look at crystals, they affect our moods. So if you're having a bad day, it's going to make it worse. It's going to make you feel worse. If you're having a good day, it's going to boost that. And see, so I understand that. And in magic, I say you have to feed off energies, and I think a lot of people know about or have an idea of what a succubi is, and incubi, and actual psychic vampires and things of that nature, where they actually do feed off their energies. In magic and occult, it's the same. You could feed off the energies of other humans or animals. And so rather, by using the stones, charging them with the sunlight and the moon, depending on what I want them for, there I'm able to use those energies, you know what I mean, into myself, as opposed to me thinking those crystals are enhancing me. It's more
Right.
or less I'm using them to enhance myself,
Yeah.
knowing that it's coming from me, what the all gave me, what the all existing in me has made it capable for me to do.
Right. But it's much like the idea of taking mushrooms is that we often have this conversation to where it's like it is a good time if you're ready for the hard work that comes with it. Is that the things that psychedelics and hallucinogenics offer you is that it's like, okay, you're ready for the hard work, here you go, here's the hardest work you'll ever do in your life. And so people like you and I really resonate and respond to that because we know how to do hard work. It's just that we also know the difference between doing hard work and getting it confused between corporate bureaucratic structure, right? Like this is the actual work where you could just feel whatever center mass inside of you. You begin to focus on your breathing, and then you begin to focus on the light around you, and you just begin to interact between the two. That is the work. It doesn't have as much to do with the bureaucratic oaths that you take of like, well, HR is saying that you'll never mention politics or religion within the work environment. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Like I understand like that has its own place too. However, there's this entire other identity that we need to really interact with. And I think it's one of the foremost things that makes our culture so sick is that we tell people like, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. And, like we live in a democracy, even though what we really live in is a constitutional republic. However, everybody's workplace is the most anti-democratic environment ever. It is more like living under a monotheistic uh, oligarchy or a monotheistic dictatorship. So everybody that's telling you like, well, yeah, like it's great to be in America because it's a democracy, which again it isn't. It's a constitutional republic. But the one of the biggest prowesses of the U.S. is our work economy, and it is within all of those work economies that are more like a dictatorship than anything else.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said it before on here. It's like voluntary slavery. I mean, if we could call it that, honestly, we volunteered for it. And you know, and you look at your choices. The choices are: do you starve, or do you work this job to pay your rent? And now some of us get to live your dream where you're doing your career, what you want to do. And not to say that we can't. Honestly, that's why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, for me, this honestly is more the direction I would like to take and make my source of income from, is doing podcast and researching and studying and
Or
talking about
harvesting
esoteric and occult
crystals.
symbolism.
You could just go out into the windswept wilderness and then find a particular landscape that is rich in, say, rhodochrosite. Rhodochrosite occurs very frequently in Colorado. Like you could actually go up not far from your neighborhood. You just go a little west from there and you will find rhodochrosite naturally occurring. And that is a beautiful red crystal. I think that it's more associated with like uh, the function of will in almost a violent way. Like rhodochrosite has a bit of violence to it. But like what you and I are doing right now is that we work the 9 to 5, and everything that I was saying, I didn't mean to depress anybody or whatever, but the point is that we truly have the best of both worlds. Is that what are you doing working the 9 to 5? Is that, well, you're not just feeding yourself, you're also feeding your entire family, and you are also allotted these moments where you could just create whatever, bro. Like this podcast that you and I do together, that is the time that we're allotted because we work the other side of things. And there's a lot of merit and value to that. Whereas we always like to reverse engineer language, and whereas you had mentioned that the entire English language as we know it is very much an invention just to get us down a cornhole, is that we have so many misconceptions in our language, such as saying that a thing is on fire. And until you really understand other languages, say Japanese, the Japanese do not say that your house is on fire. They say that your house is within fire. And that makes much more sense because fire is a devouring mechanism. Um, but we also are guilty of that when it comes to crystals, is that everybody is saying like, well, that's like the ultimate hippie, like go fucking pray over and calibrate your crystals, like woo woo, ooh, like live in Boulder, go fuck yourself. And it's like, well, it's in the language, like the idea of crystallization, the idea of compression, collection, and purity. That is crystallization, yeah? I don't know if anybody is able to follow me on this particular subject, but the idea of crystallization is that you have pink opal, you have pink fluorite, you have aragonite, and all of these things are pure down to the molecular structure as to what they are. That's what creates crystallization, is that these things collect outside of the environment and they become these little, like Brandon said, little totems, little trinkets that you are able to collect and that you can resonate with. That is the process of crystallization. And with each iteration or representation or realization of any particular crystal, whereas you have a very broad collection, broad spectrum within the color spectrum of, say, like pink, warmth, purple, very, very everything interacting with the heart. Like I just looked up a couple of definitions and I didn't know any better, but I looked them up and there it is. Like it is all very much like grounding in the own assertion of your own loveliness. Whereas the crystals that would speak to me would probably be assertion, sometimes violence, and versatility. Right. So like topaz would be something that resonates with me more, or uh, what's the aquarium? It sounds like aquarium. There's a stone there that sounds like that I resonate with a lot.
Oh, aquamarine.
Aquamarine. Thank you. Thank you.
Aquamarine.
Aquamarine is very much connected, not at all to the heart, but very much connected to the spirit, the soul, and the id. And so the combination between topaz and aquamarine are potentially dangerous. It's like a very fine line that you would want to walk between the two because one is assertion, one is certainty, the other is the establishment of the soul and the id, both completely disconnected from the heart. Whereas all of your stones are very much connected to the heart, which is nice.
Well, no, I have them for all different chakras. And these particular ones, a lot of them were. Um, one of them, I don't remember which one it is connected more to the solar plexus, sacral and root chakras in the lower, basically in the Qi Gong. It's
Would
called
help.
the
Yeah, you
lower
said solar
Dantian.
plexus, like the center mass, right? The solar
No,
plexus.
see, the solar
Oh,
plexus is 2 inches above your belly button.
right around the diaphragm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Solar plexus, diaphragm, and then okay, so the sacral, which is more of like the hips and the
it's below
foundation.
your belly button, and then your root is like your tailbone area.
Okay.
I mean, you have your heart, your throat, you have the third eye, and you have your crown. Those are the main seven. It goes up to 12, but they're all intertwined in the middle, and in your wrists, and your palms, and things like that,
Mm,
according to the book of Thoth,
right.
or Jehudi, as the Cometians called him. You
Or
know,
like they called him in what was that video game?
Zone of the Enders.
One of the Enders. God damn it, that game.
Oh, an amazing game. Zone of the Enders 2, for those
So
of you who've
good.
never played it.
So
It's like
good.
plugging yourself into a video game, literally.
Yeah. It was like playing ping pong or uh foosball. It had a very kinetic feel to it where you were really like throwing the controller around as you played. It was pretty fucking fantastic. My little brother turned me on to a game that I'm gonna have to see if it's available for free, and it's called the fuck is it called? Hot Surprise or something. But the craziness of the mechanics of the game is that time moves when you move. That's the only thing that happens in the game is that if you don't move, then time doesn't move. And you'll see somebody come in through a door and shoot at you, but as long as you stand still, the bullet stands still. The second you move, the bullet, it's just the wildest fucking mechanic ever. There's something that feels like definitely breaking the fourth wall into realms of the metaphysics or religion or something about that fucking game. It's very, very wild.
Definitely sounds like it. It sounds like what isn't that quantum physics or I mean it's very much tied into space time and the three dimensions, which is fourth dimension is space time. Because without uh time, right, it doesn't give us measurement of moments. And
Mm,
that's what our lives are, right? And that's what we try to document is the measurement of moments. There's a movie we watched in college together. Remember, somebody was explaining that. I remember thinking that was the most profound thing anyone ever said. And, looking back, you really do. Your whole life is you try to preserve these moments. You try to measure what each moment is. And that's what time is for. And that's where we come up with the past, the present, and the future. Even though time exists all together simultaneously. There's no difference in time or anything like that. That's why Einstein theorized we had to bend space time rather than go in a linear path to a certain point in time, because it's the pie theory, right? Where it's more like the pie and you have slices in a pie, and time, each piece of time are these different slices in that pie, as opposed to it just being this linear line,
hmm
the way that we perceive time.
Right. Some people get the cheese, other people get the marinara. Everybody else lives in the crust of the pie because they look at it linearly. Whereas if you turn it and then you see the whole circle, then you realize that you have options of selecting this side or the toppings, this and the other thing. The way you were talking about time and the way that we do experience it, it kind of like resonated with what I was saying earlier about crystallization. Is that we as beings, as the advanced hominid beings that we are, we're not that much different than a grouping of moss or a stone, right? It just because we could move and we could speak and we could like consider and conceptualize things doesn't make us that much different than a fucking stone or a grouping of moss or a forest of aspen. Um, but it is our intention to go through life and seek these moments and really experience those moments. Those moments are the crystallizations, right? Like it is the culmination the coming together of things and the crystallization of them. So whenever you are harvesting actual crystals, that is also true of the memory of the earth. And I feel like that's something that Nikolai Tesla spoke about a lot, is that he was very obsessed with crystals and the process of crystallization for that very reason.
Yeah, and so I don't know if we mentioned it before, but we just had a negative 16-degree day and there was snowfall. But the reason why I bring this up is because as it was falling, it was so cold that it was literal creation being frozen into time, and you can literally see it. And when I was shoveling the next day, I was telling Lisa, like, each of the snowflakes, you could hear them jingling like little pieces of glass as they were going into the shovel, because everything was so still, so quiet, so peaceful that you could
Mhm.
hear it. And I don't know if you experienced it, but also along with the snowflakes in the snow, everywhere the next morning, when we woke up and it was negative 16, there was these squares everywhere that had frozen all over the sidewalk, little freaking weird squares everywhere. And it was like I said, it's creation freezing in time, but why would it form in squares as opposed to the normal snowflakes that I was seeing when I was shoveling, the ones that sounded like little pieces of glass? They look like little tiny snowflakes, which is this is our consciousness manifesting as it's falling and
Right. And if you're
freezing.
not careful, then nature will take over and begin to manifest like simple squares and everything. Like, why do you think it was squares? Because even if people are unaware of like our entire cityscape, our entire city structure, our entire lives are very like square bound. Like we've had this conversation before as to where I'd much rather live in a circular teepee with a fire pit in the center and everybody gets together and sits in a circle as opposed to having a corner. I don't even want to begin to think as to how much dust I have collecting in the corner of this square unit that I live in. And so if whether
That
you're
evil
aware of
lives
it
in
or not,
corners.
the cold is going to bring out the full realization of reality. And so you did see it expressed in terms of like square like shapes and everything. We've had the conversation before where you look at water crystals as they freeze, where one person prays over it, says he loves it, says, I feel like this water like I feel for my wife. And then he freezes it and he looks at the water crystals and it's a beautiful mandala. It's a beautiful geodesic structure. And then he'll take the same water from the same source and he'll say, I fucking hate you. You fucking disgust me. And then he'll look at the water crystals of that after freezing it, and it is just pure chaos. I gotta think of the particular words.
His name is Misato. I can't even remember his name, but funny thing is that he actually does healing with water and vibration, two things
Mm-hmm.
that we're always talking about on here. And because he knew there was healing properties and water could retain memories, he wanted to prove it by doing that study and freezing it and showing people. Because what he's also saying, and it's been in new studies about our genes. I think you and I have talked about it before, just personally. But our genes also retain memories of our ancestry. That is carried on into our genes, things that we relate to survival. I mean, things that make you feel a certain way. And I think we also talked about this a little bit with the Russell Brand when we were bringing him up,
Right.
the way that he makes you feel uneasy because maybe in a past life, that soul we had a previous feeling for. So in this life, without knowing the person, there's a vibe you're getting and you don't understand it, but it could be a possibility that in a past life, maybe this person done you wrong in some way that you have this negative vibe with. Um,
There's
but
something about that man's charisma that concerns me, is that he does seem to be so wholesome and so charismatic and so honest and truthful. And that's his whole brand, his Russell brand. That's his whole platform is, but there's something about the openness of his charisma that I just can't not look twice and be like, there's something off here. I don't understand it. But like, it could potentially happen to us. If we have 6 to 8 million viewers, then I'm sure the same fucking thing could happen to us, is that everybody hangs on your every word or whatever. And then you begin to lose yourself in the investment of everybody else saying, like, hey, this makes a difference. This is valid. This is important. And then it's like the problems with the Star Wars prequels is that George Lucas got so high on his own supply that it kind of fucked up the whole narrative, right?
I mean, there's aspects I like about it, but I do feel that it lost what it we truly imagined it to be from what you get rumors of in what became the original trilogy, but was actually 4, 5, and 6. You know, go figure how that happened. But just saying that, yeah, from what you see in the movies, you're expecting a totally different outcome. And I remember our friend Neil, he once said it best, that Darth Vader got a control of George Lucas and got out of hand a little bit, you know.
Right. I miss the days, and I never was that big of a Star Wars fan, but I miss the days where Luke Skywalker was his own character, right? And then the mystery behind his relation with Darth Vader, who turns out to be Anakin, well, it was important. Like, that's why Star Wars was so beautiful, is that you were left as the viewer to fill that in. Like, when Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original series talks about the Clone Wars, it was like, the fuck is that? I just have
Yeah.
to think it up myself. Like, I thought they were talking about the Clone Wars as that the Empire, the Proto Empire, was actually cloning Jedi, and Obi-Wan had to fight Obi-Wan or some fucking thing. Like, you didn't know, and it didn't tell you, and everybody had a different interpretation. Like, Luke Skywalker was just some fucking kid, and like, you got the relationship sort of developed between he and Anakin, or he and Darth, whatever. But when they go back and they really flesh it out, it's kind of like the same issues that Legend of Korra has versus Avatar: The Last Airbender, is that once you start fleshing it out too much, it loses all of its je ne sais quoi, its unspoken yet impermanent quality.
Of course, I agree with you on that one. I mean, we were just talking about this today because I got Lil Gio to watch the first 5 episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender with me. And I mean, you said it when you were saying that you felt it was going to be another show, but more for the effeminate, showing more the divine feminine instead of showing like super masculine Sokka and things like that.
Mm.
Which I do think that the first series did it good on both ends, as far as feminine
They
and
made Sokka
masculine
wear
go.
a
Because I mean, you
dress,
got
but it wasn't
Zuko's sister.
woke trans ideology. When Sokka wears the dress, he did so as the hyper ultimate masculine ideal, right?
Yeah.
That's what upset him, is that he still, what he was more masculine by wearing the Kyoshi Isle warrior dress. It wasn't this
Oh, that was
like,
Sokka.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And
But
then
you
let
got
Korra
Zuko's.
just shit the bed, bro. Like, and I was so excited because it's like, okay, they could really take this concept and then give it to young girls, which I think would be great. Like, I think that Avatar with Aang and Katara and Sokka and Kyoshi and who fucking ever was as accessible to young girls as much as it was boys. But then when they came out with Korra and you saw the trailers, like, the trailers were gorgeous. But then you watch the show and it's literally just like this woman falling into all of the tropes that all women are held to, is that she has romantic interests with everybody on the team. Each season she's got a new romantic interest of somebody within her sphere of influence. And then at the very last episode, like, well, she's gay now. Like, okay, like, it would be okay if you did that on its face. But the fact of it is that you took one of the best concepts in the last 100 or 200 years in terms of literary investment or endeavors of creativity of storytelling with Avatar: The Last Airbender, which, again, I am that nerd, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of other competitions like Studio Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki, some of the most incredible art ever, but it is art. It is more art than it is storytelling. Uh, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. You know how perfect a structure and an architecture of storytelling that is. But there's something about Avatar: The Last Airbender, a show for fucking children on Nickelodeon, for God's sake, that it is the perfect fusion of the two, and it is completely wholesome and unassuming of getting really viable information across in a way that's palatable for anybody from the ages of 98 to 5. Right.
It was esoteric as hell. I mean, there's a lot in it, esoteric, and there's a lot of truth in it, especially with the elements and how to use them. And I believe a lot of it could be true, that there was something we lost. We have the control over that stuff, but we lost it. And it's a matter of, I don't know, I don't want to say learn because you're not learning it. You already know it. You just forgot it.
Yeah.
So it's rediscovery of it, I guess. And we're all going through the struggle of breaking this blockage. And again, I've talked about it with the Royal Arch, that in as above, so below, the 6 is 9 and 9 is 6. And this represents all the water signs, and it's a keystone that blocks it in. And it's right above your third eye in your libraries, so together we have to break that, and going back, I guess, to it being the holiday season, right? This is something we've talked about before. It was, that the Christos oil that's secreted, that goes down and comes back up. It's born in Bethlehem and it shoots up and it's crucified at 33, also representation of Mary Magdalene, 33, the age Jesus died, 33 vertebrae in your spine. And it comes up, and the Christos oil comes back to the land of milk and honey, right? Your brain secretes a milk and honey, so it comes back. And here we start to reach higher levels of consciousness. We start to reduce aging. We're accessing our life force instead of eating from the tree of life. We're actually putting it back into ourselves instead of spreading dead seeds. But the Claustrum, Santa Claustrum, who goes down the chimney, leaves gifts, and ascends back up. It was also where that comes from. I mean, so when we were talking about the Christmas thing, I said Santa's another story, and there's many different myths and many different cultures. I mean, you really have to look at where is everything pointing at is our consciousness. What was everybody so concerned about in ancient times, that they all agreed upon is spirit and consciousness and this body, right? All being one.
I want to take it back to Avatar: The Last Airbender. As to what really resonated with me was the way that they interacted with their element. The waterbenders moved like water. You could see in this children's cartoon the contract that waterbenders had with water, that earthbenders had with earth, that firebenders had with fire, that airbenders had with air. And then Legend of Korra, the earthbenders were basically telekinetic, and they were just like, to me, my X-Men, and like float a stone. And it's like, no, you broke the contract. And like, I have watched and rewatched the original series so many times over to really figure out how well it was that they understood that to interact with water and be a water bender, you have a very specific contract, the way that you interact with it. It's like there's one episode where they hit one of the air temples and Katara is all excited and she's like, look, Aang, airbenders. And he's excited. And then he looks and realizes like, no, they're not airbenders. They're not interacting with the wind. They are just utilizing it. And she's like, well, how? How do you know that? And he's like, you could tell, like, you could see that they're doing it without spirit. There was something in the way that throughout the original series that they interacted with whatever element in a way that it made sense. Like the earthbenders weren't just telekinetic for stone. There was something more going on. There was something more of a mechanism. Um,
So I get what you're saying, dude, because like the way I resonate with it, okay, I mean, we were talking about the whole thing is smoking a cigarette, right? To
Yeah.
me, holding the cigarette up to my face, just doing that reminds you of just like igniting a flame, right?
Yeah.
For me, like water bending would be like I would feel it in my blood. You're literally feeling this energy course from your veins out, influencing a vibration of everything that's moist around you, including water molecules in the air, and pulling it, right? And air bending, to me, that's like using your chi, your ki, your soul, your whatever you want to say it is. And this is an outward expression of oneself, right? Affecting the air currents around you. Earth bending for me was always like harnessing the magnetics inside your body, feeling like down into the earth, like how Magneto's powers are in the X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
right? After they took it away and gave it back, then he resonated with the earth, which ended up making him more powerful because he pulled his power from earth. So in feeling that earth, you're feeling the magnetic. And so the scene where he first goes to the earth town, the earth benders, they're freaking stomp the stone up in the air, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it freaking goes on this cart that carries it. And as it carries it and they're there, they go, right? They're pushing it with their earth bending like a magnetic force. And it goes down another tunnel. There's another group there and they shoot it up, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And it's just like I said, you're feeling like this magnetic energy they're pulling from the earth. And I completely get what you're saying because that's how it resonates with me, just visually watching it.
Yeah. So the wildest thing is that the culmination of the first season is when they're in Antarctica or whatever, the Northern Water Tribe. And what the fuck is the villain's name? General Zhao.
Yeah.
And he kills Yin. I think it's Yin. He kills the whitefish, I think. Push and
Mm-hmm.
pull. Put and ya, like pull and twang. These are the two. And so he kills the one, and Aang goes into God mode with the other one. So Pull is dead. But if you watch Aang in that God state, this is the amount of attention that they have to the show, is that when you watch it, when he's like the giant fish god boy, is that every motion he makes is a push. Because that is he is the yang, he is the black, he is the push. The pull is dead. There's no pull, and so everything he does is a push.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah. When I
Very,
realized that,
very
I was
good.
like, such a good
So,
show. There were other levels that I wanted to get into after going back to Avatar. Everything you were saying was just like really resonated. I don't know if you could recall exactly what it was you were saying. But like talking about Avatar in this way was the way to get back into what it was that you were initially saying. Um, yeah,
but
that's
I want to take it back to what you were saying about what Aang said that they're just using it. So the way that that relates to me is like in Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, right? How they use the wind riders and the way they explain how they glide on the currents and you
mm,
steer and you feel. So like anybody out there who's ever done any tubing, like real tubing, where you're tied to the back of a boat, it's going like 40 miles an hour and you're holding on to this thing. Well, you have to balance your center of gravity like a
mhm,
ball in
mm,
between you and the surface you're on. And the lower you are to the surface, the less air that can get through and break your bubble, break your strength, right? Your supports. And that is exactly how I feel that it is like in Nausicaa, the way that they glide on the winds, and which is what I feel like Aang is saying, where they're using it, they're not putting the spirit into it. Like I was saying, like in that, to me, it's an outward expression of your aura. It just,
right. Flow state, flow state. So you're gonna have to bring your shoes up. I assume you're wearing the shoes.
no, of course I am.
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay, so it's like this
Shows them that
conversation
good.
that you and I have all the time is that once you wear shoes like that and you could feel each individual thing. It's almost like playing piano as you walk. Your legs don't feel
Yeah.
like legs any longer. They feel like arms with like slightly less developed hands
Or
at the
tree
end of your
trunks with
appendage, where
roots into the ground. That's
you're really grasping every step that you take. You begin to enter more easily into a flow state of really like, look at what we could do with our hands, right? Like, I'm a sculptor, I'm a pianist, and so I understand like all of these things, all of these digits, they have their own place within the octaves. Like, I have the unique genetic disposition that, I got short fingers, but my palms are broad. My pinky finger and my thumb reaches an entire octave on piano. That gives me special abilities to be able to play piano. But what we're able to do with our hands, certainly with our thumbs, our opposable digits, is the grasping, right? And that's how our brains work too, is that we capture and grasp a concept, and then we work it, sculpt it, play with it, turn it around, turn it inside out, turn it on its head, and then regurgitate it as a completed whatever. But you're also able to do that with your feet. And so when you wear those open toes, it's something you say all the time, is that you recognize is that your legs don't feel like legs anymore.
Yeah, or my feet, because like before, the feet, they just feel like a solid object, right? When you're walking. Instead, now they feel like hands with fingers, appendages on them that I can use, because you start to develop the muscles and you start to find that you have more movement in your toes. I mean, of course, the shoes aren't for everybody, and you could wear any type of minimalistic shoe, Merrells and stuff like
Or go
that
barefoot.
out
I went
there.
barefoot for fucking years. You remember me,
Uh,
bro. I went barefoot
yeah,
all the fucking time.
I just like them because I want to get back to our roots. I mean, told all the time I'm like a hippie. I'm a freaking that guy with the crystals, the one who wants to walk around in
And
the
the man bun.
toe shoes,
Don't
the
forget the man
freaking
bun. You got that too.
yeah, whatever. It's just I feel, I guess, and that's why I don't resonate with so much of this reality that we live in. I feel like there's a part of nature or the netters, that we've lost. And I know you know a little bit about this, studying Egyptian um, culture. And so when they refer to their gods, we call them gods. They didn't call them gods. They called them netters, NTRs. And what they meant by that, it was a living consciousness of nature, right? It's a living, acting consciousness of nature. It's a force of nature that's conscious and living. Um, with that being said, that's where we actually got the root word for nature. But these people, they would use the nature. And I want to bring this up because it resonates with this whole Avatar's Last Airbender.
Mm.
Okay. So, and I'm coming to find, I haven't tried them yet, but there are tests you could do where you basically ask the netters to give you the ability to control some of the elements to do certain things, right? Um, and this is all speculative that I've been hearing about it. Like I said, I haven't tried any of this, but and I've heard even that's how the Egyptians did certain things, by asking, like, give me the strength of the wind to help my cells go, something like that, right? They're not just bringing this energy out of nowhere. They're asking nature, basically, the consciousness of nature, to assist in something. And I kind of discussed this a little bit on the episode with Lane, where I was talking about Dr. Robert Gilbert talking about a spell where we could harness our own elementals, create them from our consciousness, and have the 4 points. And with these elementals, we could use them to ask the other spirits around us, like, say, the Archangel Michael, and ask to borrow his power for certain things. Because something like that, a being like that, that's so beyond us, so above us, they're not going to acknowledge us. They're not going to listen to our commands.
This opens up a whole can of worms that I've been on about recently, and it's interesting the way that you frame it, that you do, is that in Japanese culture, during Fukushima, our buddy Johnson, he's home in Osakashi, and Fukushima hit, and they had to climb the local mountain to get away from the floodwaters and the waste and the damage. And that particular mountain, it's very much like the NATR, the Natter. The Egyptian concept is that mountains in Japanese are much like people, not necessarily demigods or gods necessarily, but you treat them as women, and they all have particular names and energies and otherwise. This is also true in Nepal. I just watched an awesome documentary about the what was it, the 2013 earthquake that hit Nepal and the Himalayas. And so obviously you have like a bunch of white Americans that are going to climb Everest because that's what white people do. And they got hit by this earthquake, and all of the locals were like, you have to realize this happened for a reason. Like, these mountains we treat as our mothers. And if you don't respect it as your mom that could hit you with a fucking frying pan, you're in dangerous territory. You need to be able to respect that. There is something very much akin to that. I had a conversation the other day. Somebody was trying to get me to read the King James Bible, and they were just adamant that it be the King James. And so I play the fool, I play the idiot. And it's like, I think that anybody's religious proclivity is great, and I love to learn it. And so I'll be easygoing enough where people get the wrong idea and they think that I am actually ignorant. The King James Bible is a book of conquest. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you see the penning of the King James, what they occluded, they didn't necessarily put anything extra in, but what they occluded did enough damage that it became a book of conquest. Is that the King James Bible created two of the most evil words in communion with each other throughout all of recorded history, and that is manifest destiny. That right there is a concept of fucking conquest. The King James Bible was also writ almost intentionally because of my heritage and my background that has always resonated very strongly with me is the Irish side of my family. Ireland is an island that we were completely separate from the whole of Western Europe, right? But in Western Europe, most importantly, you had Albion. Albion is the ancient name of England. It is the source of everything that like gobbled up all of the other countries and created the United Kingdom, right? But that kingdom is founded and penned on the concept of the King James Bible. They didn't have to really insert any new information or any new ideas. What they did instead is they occluded some of the most important books that would have prevented concepts like the Crusade or concepts like the whole eradication and genocide of peoples like we saw in the Western Hemisphere. Ireland was always unique and completely isolated because it was an island. And no matter how hard Albion, England, tried to do, Ireland was always a thorn in their side. They would abduct the people, they'd blacken the land, they would salt the earth, they would destroy everything that they could per village. Because back in that time, per their technology, when you say that something is beyond the Pale is a river in Ireland. And to go beyond the Pale is to where you are just completely out of bounds in terms of anything that you understand scientifically, rationally, or otherwise. You go back there, and then you're looking at way too many different tribes. Is that Albion, the English, would wipe out a particular tribe. They would land their ships on Ireland, and they would wipe out a single tribe, and then they'd go over to the neighbors, and the neighbors would be just totally smitten. Like, thank you so much. We hate those assholes. And Albion, the English, were like, what? We're here to conquer you. Where's your centralized government? And they're like, the fuck does that even mean? Like, we're all independent tribes. We don't even speak the same language. You just did us a solid by wiping them out. No matter how hard England tried to knock that house of cards over, they just find a different house of cards in each new territory that they met. So the King James Bible was, yeah, honestly, the deep dives that I've done, I think that it was written specifically as a way to unify peoples as like a source of invasion, right? Like Albion began to realize that you can't be an independent people, and so you have to give them a unique narrative that they all subscribe to. And so you could give me a better example. What are better examples of Catholicism beyond Ireland and Mexico? What are two better examples of conquered peoples than Ireland and Mexico?
There isn't. And so, I mean, respectfully, because I did grow up with the King James, and I do see that there's a lot of truths hidden away within it. And Adam, you're right. There's a lot that's removed, and with that, it was used as a tool. So any of you out there who have seen the Book of Eli, um, when he's
The movie.
protecting this book, right? And the reason, and I guess spoiler alert for anything I might give away during this little summary, is that he's carrying around the Holy Bible. Gary Oldman wants it. And the reason why Gary Oldman wants it is because he understands the power of the Bible. It can control people. And with this power, he's like, I can control their minds in ways I never could before. That's how powerful this book is. That's why I need it. That's why I want it. And because of that, Denzel knows that there's people out there like that. And this book could either be used as a tool for good or a tool for evil. And he wants to get it to the right people to where it could be preserved, held on to, and eventually in a future age, or maybe even in the modern age, be used as a tool for hope and good. So Gary Oldman wants it, and he sends all these people to come kill Denzel and stuff. Well, like I said, spoiler alert, he finally gets the book. When he gets it, it's Braille because Denzel's blind.
Mhm.
But Denzel memorized the whole book, so he's still able to take the knowledge to the place where they could document it for it to be used for good. I do feel the same way about the Bible, even the King James Bible, which is the one he's carrying around in the movie. The reason why it's considered good is it is taught to be the last collection of the works to be completed. King James wrote the book on what is it? Demonology.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that with the scripture, some of the stories I believe have truths to them. Some of the stories I feel are meant to be in a sense, and they might have happened. I can't honestly say, but in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, what they're really
It seemed
there
like
for is
Moses'
the
life
allegory.
and everything related to Moses was de facto fact. Like that was real shit with Moses. Like the
Well, I
part of
mean,
the Red Sea. You'll see Egyptian carts at the basin of this sea. Like we're finding these things like
yeah,
Noah
that matched the era.
completely. And so Noah, same thing. But then you get
Yeah.
into a lot of the other characters, like what really were they saying with like Samson and Delilah? Is that Samson
So,
and Delilah is kind of the most wholesome relationship ever, to where, the idea that she tortured him and held him down and cut his hair, that sounds like a relationship that men have with women, is like, I offer you my power and you will always do nothing but abuse that, but that is my love for you, is that I know that that's the exchange kind of a thing. Like I always thought that Samson and Delilah was kind of one of the prettier stories out of, you know, recorded literary history.
so I mean, with that story, there's a lot to it, and no, it's not really supposed to be as beautiful of a story. And like I said, the one that is the true beautiful one is the one that's hidden, the one between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, the
Mhm.
one that was his wife.
Mhm.
That is the true love in scripture. But Samson and Delilah was supposed to be a negative one. And the point it was proven more or less that I feel, and I mean, the way that the churches will teach you is that it was because he lost his path in the way of the all of God. He wanted to be in service to self instead of glory to God. He wanted all the glory for himself. And that's why he had falling. And until he had humility in that moment, then he asked for God's strength again, and God gave it to him because his hair was sprouting. So his power came from the hair, which I think is an allegory to what, I don't know if we've mentioned it on here or not, but in Avatar, right? The hair is connected to everything on the planet, right? That's how they connect to Awa through the tree, how they download memories, how the tree is connected to the planet like a fungal network, like we brought up before, how Paul
Mhm.
Stamets talks about it. They connect to the animals, everything, their consciousness with their hair. And it said those with longer hair are more connected spiritually because the hair is your intent. Because again, your brain is not your consciousness, it is a receiver for where your consciousness is coming from.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, and obviously the U.S. military did a 40-year-long study of predominantly Native American men, because Native American men more predominantly, more often have long hair, and they actually found that their situational awareness was better than everybody else's. And it's an interesting concept, like talking about that is that the hair on your head are dead cells, right? Like when you die, you will have a beautiful head of hair in your pretty coffin, like your pretty Cadillac coffin. And it's so bizarre that these dead cells that crown atop your temple actually do benefit your situational awareness. Like you came from a background that was the most anti men should never have long hair. But almost immediately after you and I met, I was telling you, I was like, bro, I didn't cut my hair until I was 14. I'd highly recommend it. And you were like, you know what? I'm gonna grow my fucking hair out. Like that was one of the most baffling situations that I had ever been in, is that you came from people where it was more likely that you would identify as a blood or a crip. And then you meet this fucking Blanco Chongo who's telling you to grow your hair out, and grow your fucking hair out you did.
So, what's funny is that when I used to have shorter hair and I used to have the side part, Lisa always used to call it a nerd lick, right? And she's all, look it up. It's a real thing. She said that they say that that happens is because your brain is existing outside of your head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's why your hair is standing up like that, because you're stretching it out. I was like, what the fuck? So I actually looked into it, and actually there is some truth behind it. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's what I mean by that. Your consciousness, your brain is the receiver for the consciousness. So if you're receiving and you're open, your receiver's more like this as opposed to this skull that's holding it in. You know, our energy is out. And, I truly believe that. I believe that our hair, because look, what do the Rastafarians do? They grow dreadlocks. And see, look, everything is specific and esoteric in that story of Samson, is they specifically say that what they knew him by being a Hebrew person, a person of the Nazarene, was by his long dreadlocks. They specifically said dreadlocks. And he had
Mm-hmm.
7 dreadlocks, which is an esoteric number.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean? It's not
Oh
like
yeah.
he just had long flowing hair like they show in the movie, which I seen. It's not that I hate the movie, but it's not accurate to the story. It's important that they were dreadlocks, because they say when you dread the hair together, the antenna becomes infinitely stronger, because now you took all these things and made it into a larger antenna.
Mm-hmm.
But the Rastafarians, okay, you have the Native Americans, you even had the Asians, in China, in Japan, all these other countries around Asia that had longer hair. And it was considered very bad or very bad luck to cut your hair off, right? It was a very negative thing for a man to cut their hair off. And there's reasons for it. Why did they hold such high esteem for the hair? Like the Japanese, even when they cut their hair, they just cut the top right here and left their
Mm-hmm.
ponytail in the bun. And the reason for that is because the samurai needed to be prepared for death at all times. So right before going to battle, because they shaved their head here for funeral purposes, they would shave their head right before a battle, but still leave their long hair and their ponytail in there. But
Yeah.
they're ready for death, you know?
Yeah.
And this
Fucking long hair,
conversation definitely turned pretty
like
badass
yeah,
pretty
completely.
quick.
And again, I was just an asshole kid, right? Like I just decided that I wasn't gonna cut my hair until I was 14 years old. I had hair down to my ass and I had perfectly fucking straight hair. And it's amazing because a lot of the people that I interacted and incorporated my life with, like Earl, right? You remember Earl? He and I,
Yeah.
blood brothers, whatever. Not like the contract that you and I have as blood brothers, but he did the white boy dreadlocks, and he had those things for 10 plus years, but he had one dreadlock specifically that when he cut his hair, he held on to this thing. It was the length of my goddamn arm. And I swear to you, it weighed 5 pounds because a dreadlock isn't just like me. I had straight hair, but a dreadlock is it might be this long, but that is 18 feet of hair kind of like knotted up inside of itself to the point that it weighs fucking 5 pounds. There is a lot of fucking history built into dreadlocks, and that seems to be by design, right?
Yep.
You ever
So-
want a good reset, you just reset yourself by, you know, sometimes I'll fucking shave myself clean bald. Other times one of these days I'm just going to stop cutting my hair and grow back out again, But
dude, so bringing this conversation more full circle is I watched Avatar again the other day with the recent Avatar 2 coming out. You know, I just want to be up to date on it before going in and watching. Obviously, it's freaking 2 years in the waiting, you know, in the making. And so in it, when he's freaking connecting his hair to the tree, right? And he's asking Awa, read Grace's mind. If she's in there with you, read her mind and see where my people came from. We killed everything we came from. Our earth, our mother, we killed it. And when he's saying that stuff, it's like talking to the netters, right? In the way that the Egyptians did, or like you were saying in Shintoism, the Japanese, how they bonded with nature, you know. And a lot of this, remember you were watching that show
Mushishi.
Yeah.
Mushishi is the best show in all creation. Like Avatar: The Last Airbender is fucking fantastic. I'll certainly hold it as the most high. But Mushishi, there's something about that show that is just like it really speaks to your soul.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what the Mushishi are. So in the story, you get like, you know, sometimes you'll see the guy like on Family Guy, right? It shows the little squiggly line. He's like, hey, I'm the freaking clear squiggly line that goes across your eye. And you see these things out of the corner of your eye. Well, according to this show, and it's in the Japanese Shintoism, right? In
Yeah.
the belief system of Shintoism.
But it's also at the
That,
time, like directly before Western colonialism began to influence itself across the world. Is that, and this is something that I was getting into about the King James, is that the reason that England could never destroy Ireland is that we did have that avatar tree that we would plug our hair into and commune with. You know, like the Japanese had that too in terms of the ways that they worship the mountains. Every culture had it, like Mexico had it, fucking literally everybody had it until the nations involved in the 100 Years' War, France, Spain, England, Albion, they started fucking it up and they started treating it as sacrosanct. It's like the same thing that we do today in terms of holistic medicine, you know, tens of thousands of years worth of medical knowledge versus petrochemical medicine, which is all based off of the Rothschilds. Look at the energy that people contribute towards, you know, like modern Western medicine versus holistic dietary and healing lifestyles, right? Like if you refuse a vaccine but instead drink raw milk, then you're a fucking terrorist. It's that kind of propaganda right there. So with Mushishi, it was just after the Meiji era, I feel like, right? Like the Meiji era is when the Japanese government, the what do you call the samurai pope?
So they killed the Meiji government hired manslayer samurai to go
Right.
out, and if a village refused to submit from the Tokugawa government, right, or
Yeah.
the Tokugawa shogunate, then
Oh,
these
the
manslayers would basically execute them to bring about peace in the Meiji era.
So, anyways, in terms of like the Japanese understanding of medicine, a lot of which is what we adopted in terms of modern medicine. In Mushishi, what a mushi is a metaphysical single-celled organism, and it could be this big, it could be the size of this room, it could be the size of a mountain, but it's invisible because it exists in like a metaphysical plane. That's not that much different than what our modern Western medicine tells us is that things are microscopic, right? It's just a lower scale. So you're talking about like you can't see it unless you have this particular device. Same fucking concept, but the way the show explains things is that you and I both have seen the rainbow, right? Like there's that episode in Mushishi with the rainbow where you see it and it strikes you fucking blind. And then you just have this
Mhm.
indomitable thirst that you just have to constantly drink water. It's like a weird side effect of seeing this fucking rainbow Mushi. That's such a good show.
Yeah, but the way I understood it is that the way he's explaining them is they're like lower level dimensional beings. So they're like, if we exist in the third dimension, they're like first or second dimensional beings,
Mhm.
which is why we only get glimpses of them. It's not like you see them everywhere all the time. And again, that proves my point I brought up in here before that we exist beyond the fifth dimension, you know, all of us. And that's my proof that we don't exist here because in order to perceive the third dimension in the way that we perceive it and to perceive space time, which is the fourth dimension, to experience this and have observation of this.
Mm.
We have to be from a higher dimensional plane to be observing this. Otherwise, we would only see what is below us. You know,
I
I
feel like that's
mean,
always
it's
been profound throughout the both
theoretically.
of our lives is that is a bold fucking claim to make, is that we are, as you said it, we are beyond the fifth dimension.
I
Is
mean,
that
it's a
what it?
possibility. We don't know how much farther. Like I said,
I'm
the
saying it's
collective
a bold statement.
consciousness
However,
exists.
it would explain a lot about our situation that we always had throughout life, is that we were always effervescent and drunk on the potential of life. We were always struck blind, dumb, deaf of everything around us. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it would make a lot of sense is that if we are this conduit, not just between heaven and earth, but also between foundation and potential, right? And so we are
Yeah.
just these steaming bodies that are connected between foundational earth, existence, heavens above, potential, and then the fifth dimension. And the fifth
Oh,
dimension is, like you've been associating yourself with crystals that have very much to do with spirit.
so
So beyond potential is spirit.
there's a dimensional chart, and it's Christos Avatar. If you guys want to look him up on YouTube or TikTok, one word, Christos Avatar. And the reason why he does that is because he's talking about the 12th dimension, the Christos consciousness. So we here on Earth, we exist in the third dimension. Okay, that's where we're existing physically. Now it goes up to the 15th dimension to the angel hierarchies. Now heaven, God, the universe exists outside of these 15 dimensions. So it's beyond. And again, okay, so I want to go into this a little bit, and I've discussed this with some people I know. Rudolf Steiner talks about cycles that we live as a spiritual being. And in this cycle, he says for one cycle to complete, it takes 2,600 years. Now, mind you, if a person is an initiate or they're more of an adept or a clairvoyant, right, these three stages of initiates in Rosicrucianism, which is your ascending level of consciousness. And again, they're called other things in other cultures, but let's just go with these terms for now. And the adept being the highest. So when we reach these levels of consciousness, you can actually go through, okay, when we die, you go through a phase where our body has to absolve into the ether. And this lets go of our memories and stuff, our feelings of the past life. So then we reincarnate and manifest us a new body. We're letting go of some of the things from the past life to move on in our spiritual growth in the next. And in this time, you live one life masculine as a male and one life feminine as a female in
And
the
you think it switches
2,600
like every
years.
time?
Huh?
It goes back and forth every time. So
Yeah,
like
it's back and forth. So
okay.
whatever you died as the last time, you're going to be the opposite the next time. It takes 2,600 years. And again, this could vary in time based off of your consciousness level. Okay. So in this time, that's what it takes for one cycle, 2,600 years. Let's just use this as a base. And I brought this up before, that ancient occultists believe that if you were to put a number on it, they say you can't quantify what it would take to get to like the Christ level consciousness, which I'm telling you it's in the 12th dimension based off of this chart from Christos Avatar. And so imagine that. They say it takes 1,000 living years. So in this 2,600 year period of one cycle, this isn't living years. This is also spiritual time of you living in the ether and dealing with spirituality there. So according to Dr. Robert Gilbert, in this aspect of Rosicrucianism and that time of our spirituality and our living selves, okay, that when we live this mundane life and we live these experiences here, these are not the things that carry on through to the next life. So if you're not wanting to waste your little bit of living time in this physical plane to gain a higher consciousness and higher perspective and truly live life, truly experience it, then delving into your spirituality, your higher consciousness, and connecting with spirit and soul as one, with your mind and your body as one, connecting with the all. And all of this is through our lifetimes. These are the true knowledge that your spirit carries on into the next life, right? These are the things that guide us into what we end up becoming, what you like, what you're fascinated by. There's reasons why you're drawn to certain things. You know, it's like your spirit kind of guiding you along.
Or your spirit just going home. Um, we'll make it real personal here, is that my perspective of our relationship as friends and blood brothers or whatever is that I remember having met you and you were decked out in red everything, red shoes, red socks, red
All the
underwear,
time.
you know, red do-rag. And you were like, hey, what's up? And I was like, is it Delaney? And you're like, no, asshole, it's Delaine. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, you're super tall for like a Asia guy. And you're like, yeah, I'm Korean. And I was like, I don't think so. And you were like, fucking what did you just say, white man? And I was like, I think you're Mongolian. And you were like, there was something about that interaction right there that really resonated with you, to where it seemed like you had some kind of connection to something, right? Am I
Yeah.
completely off the mark here?
No, so I mean, and I am part Mongolian and Turkish in my heritage from my mom's side, and Korean.
Probably your dad's side, dude. Your dad being German, is that Germany and Turkey had a lot of like interaction and bifurcation and shit.
So I mean, back then, and you know, we were talking about this earlier today, and I used to be a different person. I had more of a chip on my shoulder. I was more angry, more agitated. I mean, I was
You
angry
had
at the
every
world.
reason to be. You had every reason to be.
And at that time, I was just branching out. I mean, I guess, and like you said, you want to get real personal here. So, my mom had just come out of cancer after 2 years of them telling me she wasn't going to live and things. And I was working full time and raising my siblings. And when this all happened and she made it out of cancer, you know, she started doing better. And it took a while before she started doing better, about a year. And I actually took her to that guy. I remember that Anton told us about, the Qigong dude who did acupressure and acupuncture. He actually fixed my mom, and she couldn't even go to the
Show?
bathroom no more. They had
Are you
holes in
talking
her
about Show?
kidneys.
Vietnamese
No,
Show?
I can't remember what his name was, but he was off of Federal and Alameda, but his store closed. Hong Duck.
Yeah.
Hong, it's H
God
O
damn,
N
that guy was
G
a wizard.
D
He
U
was an
C.
absolute
Hung
wizard.
Duck was what it was called.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so my mom had these tubes and she had to drain the urine out of these bags, and she couldn't actually physically use the bathroom. And that went on for a long time. And it's through the surgeries they did for her cancer. Anyways, this guy, he just read her pulse. And by reading her pulse, he was able to give her stuff that the doctors couldn't cure her with freaking pills. This guy freaking just gave her teas and honey and all this natural stuff by reading her pulse. And he freaking helped my mom.
Yeah.
But going back to the story is that during this time, I didn't party or nothing. So as a high schooler, I didn't get to experience like all the other kids, go out to parties and drink because I had responsibilities. I mean, the school worked with me to let me out to go to work because I was the only working person in the house. Because mind you, I lived in Fort Morgan, Colorado, 80 miles from Denver, where my mom was in St. Anthony Central for 2 years.
Let me walk it back a little bit for the listeners, is that Delaine could very easily say that he took care of his siblings. Delaine is the oldest sibling. He literally held that entire household together and raised three of his fucking siblings in place of his whatever vacuum and whatever absentee everybody else. He makes it sound easy. I can't imagine it was easy at all. Anyways,
So after that time period, a year went by, and again, like I said, it wasn't until she started getting better that I branched out into drugs and partying. So it wasn't until I was 19 that I like seriously got into it. Because before that, I'd only tried weed, alcohol, and tried yeah, that's it.
yeah.
I didn't do anything else until I was 19 plus, and I went crazy with it for 5 years, and then I pretty much OD'd on ecstasy, Molly, and after that, I quit doing all the hard drugs. So I've been 16 years sober at this point, with a few um, moments of doing fun and a unfortunate, inopportune time, but it wasn't something that carried on to an actual habit again, right? And because of that, I feel like I got into it with a bad crowd. I started doing a lot of things, becoming a different person, giving more into my angers of the world. So I was a very hateful, angry person at the time Adam first met me. And since then, and it's a lot of the things I've been trying to work on, because you're only going to see it as a problem. Because my thing is, and Adam knows this, when we met, I saw anger as a strength. And I felt like if I become angry, I could survive anything. So because of that, I always fell back on it. And it was always my like security blanket to become angry when I went into a survival mode, which isn't good because then I'm existing in my lower chakras because I feel fear. And the fear is what makes me feel I need to survive, which leads me to anger. And again, here we go to Star Wars, right? Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate.
To hate. Hate leads to suffering. Well, and so for me, is that initially, bam, like I had known so many motherfuckers like you. The difference is that you had every right to be angry. It's just that though you had the right, you really started to come around. It's like you could be angry at everybody. Like, I ain't gonna mistreat you, bro. We're just fucking friends. It's super, and you took care of me like a fucking mama duck, and I was like a little baby goose. You have every right to be angry given the experiences that you had, but you have so many experiences left. Imagine if you don't get in your own way. Right?
Yeah. I see unlimited potential, but see, because of the way that the journey goes, I understand things take time. So I was kind of telling you about this earlier, Adam. I want to talk about manifestation for a second. I know we're going off on a sidetrack, but and the reason why I want to talk about this is because even for me to change from then to now, and you mentioned it as like molting and me as a Scorpio, okay? There was an alchemical change that happened within me, and the only reason it happened is because I saw the problem. If I don't see it, it's not going to fix. And I guess going back to manifestation, this weekend we went to the Hill, which is Black Hawk. If for those of you who don't know, we're casinos in the mountains, nothing like it in the world. And we're eating dinner, and I have my eyes closed. And Lisa's like, "Don't fall asleep. They're gonna think you're drunk and kick us out of here. Why are you falling asleep? Are you really tired?" And I said, "I'm not tired. What I'm doing is I'm manifesting." I said, "I'm closing my eyes and I'm visualizing that we're gonna win. I'm visualizing how you look, your facial expression, mine, what it smells like, what the lights of the machine look like, how the feeling inside of us is." And I said, "And the more details, the better." And I told her we're gonna win. And she's like, "I believe that, but how do you know that?" And something changed in me. Again, like I said, I think I've been feeling things differently. So it's like a gut feeling. I just felt something there. And when I felt it, I knew, okay, now the energy's out there. It's in the universe. It's going to happen. And I told her we're going to win. Not big or nothing, but we're gonna win. We're not gonna walk away empty-handed. And she's like, "You're sure?"
You're
And
not
I said, "I'm
even
sure."
big, but you ain't gonna lose.
Yeah. So when we played, every game she sat down at, she won 3 games. We ended up in 4 hours winning $600. Now I wasn't trying to manifest getting rich. I was just trying to manifest a good time. That we were gonna win. We've lost a few times going up there, and so I was just like, I just want us to have a good time and win. That's basically what I'm manifesting, and it happened. And when it's happening, she's like, "What the?" And I said, "That's what I told you." Because every machine she sat down at, it was winning. I told her that's the power of manifestation. Now, here's the thing: when you're manifesting something bigger, say like, "Oh, I want this elaborate life. I want this type of house, this specific type of house. I want to have a wife and kids." The American dream that people think of. Now, in trying to manifest this, even using vision boards and sitting there and physically trying to manifest it in your mind with details, this takes time. So, what you're trying to manifest that you think is going to happen, oh, right away, because I was able to manifest this little bit right now, today, because I wanted it. No, it don't work that way. The type of energies you're asking for in building a bigger, better life, and maybe 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, but you'll look back and you'll say, you know what? Remember when I fucking said I was going to have this? I said I was going to manifest this and this was going to happen. That's when it starts to happen, because the energy takes a long time to adjust for everything to synchronize and then come to you. It doesn't happen in your time, it happens in the alls.
But it's
So,
also not
again,
a
that's
tool for
answering
us.
your question
Sorry, go ahead.
on patience, though. Why I say that sometimes I just let things happen in the way that they do instead of try to rush it. Sometimes I want to. Don't get me wrong. With the spirituality and growth in my lifetime, I want to rush it. But knowing we're living cycles.
My entire life is a state of meditation. I just meditate with my eyes open. This is what makes me weird to everybody else, is that they could tell that something about me is backwards from them. I'm almost in like a sleep state or something with my eyes open. The way that I interact and talk with people is that everything I do is a manifestation. But understanding that it's not a tool to be utilized to where you just make life perfectly okay. This is probably why my life is often fucked up. But I wouldn't have it any other way. That's life, right? It goes back to, what I was saying is that you came from a background and a culture is that you were, if not the only Asiatic family in Fort Morgan. Yeah. Nobody had
We
ever
were
seen
one of
anybody
3
else.
at the time.
Yeah. But they hadn't
We
seen a
were only
lot of you as to
3.
where they had you riding around on the short bus because they just thought that, I don't know, has he got Down syndrome? I don't fucking know, because they
No,
had,
that was actually in Kansas
yeah.
where I had to
Well,
do
and
that
so
because
immediately, like the first thing that I was struck with about you, and I have always had interactions like this, but you were one of the first and foremost, is it was like you had a root, you had a dialect, you had a syntax, you just didn't know it. And so what everything that I did was kind of like slapping your ass around and being like, there's your root, there's your dialect, there's your syntax. Is that this thing that Albion did? And once you understand the 100-Year War between Spain, France, and England, Albion, is that eventually Albion gave up and they just kicked back and they watched France take really the whole of Africa, all of Canada, and then they watched Spain take all of southern US and everything beneath that. And then England was just like, yeah, all right, you guys have a good time. They watched them eradicate the population. They watched as the splinter cell of our forefathers began the colonies here in the US. And then in the War of 1812, Albion came back, burnt the original White House to the fucking ground, and just took over again. Is that you can't even see the influence that Albion has in England anymore because they're here. They nest here. These are the problems that we have, is that we live and die under the crone. And the crone is a white liberal, pardon my language, cunt. It is Nancy Pelosi. It is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It is that energy. It is The View. It is Ellen. It is Ghislaine Maxwell, right? And they are the ones that are saying, well, it has to be all about equity. And it's like, the fuck are you talking about? You're the one driving around in a fucking Escalade. You're the one driving around with some man's card who provides for you. What the fuck? You're the one that's going to say that Black Lives Matter? Are you out of your fucking mind? You're actually out of your fucking mind. I'm sorry. Stop taking drugs. Do a little bit of internalizing and investigation and whatnot. There are truths that I know per my Irish background, is that outside of the crone, I know the true crone. So the example of the crone, the archetype of the crone that we all live beneath is, say, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, even young bucks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She actually answers to Sandy. So, what the fuck ever that is. I know the true crone. My great grandmother, my white grandma, we called her the white grandma because she came right out of Bristol, Ireland. We have no idea what the rest of her background was. She lived in like rural Ireland, came over here, and we called her the white grandma because she had white hair and was ashy. She was a true crone. You did not cross that woman. You did not fuck with that woman. Like all benefits that my family on my mom's side has as her great grandchildren or her grandchildren or her whatever nieces, nephews, all of that. She was a true crone. You don't fuck with that. That's an old, wise woman. And she will bust your goddamn balls if you come at her sideways. What I learned from her in the history of Ireland is that we always got along very well with the Mexican families, right? Like, if you look at Mexican culture versus Irish culture, is that back in the day, we got along thick as thieves. We got along so fucking well because they are very obsessed with the matriarch, with a woman-centric family structure, right? You yourself, and this is also something that resonated with me when I first met you, was that it was clear to me that you very much came from a matriarchal home. Though your mom was sick, your mom is a force not to be reckoned with. Like
But
your
dude,
mom,
Asian
your mom has
families
got
are a
like
lot.
God energy that you just don't like. Nope, nope.
Asian families are a lot like Latin families, and it's funny because until you date one, and you're like, oh man, this is true. Like, because I only had my family to really base that off of, but then seeing it on another side, I was like, wow, this is true. We
Mhm.
really are a lot alike in a lot of the ways. Where they have all of your family members living in the same house. If your family is there, right? You got your grandma, you got your aunts, your uncles, your mom, your dad, your nieces, your nephews, right? Everyone living in the same home, taking care of each other, right? It's the same concept in both sides. But that's
But
historically where we messed up. We given up on the old, which made us more selfish in our society. Instead of they raised us, they took care of us, and in the end, and I'm not saying us, but as a society, we've given up on the elderly and we just want to put them in homes and go away. Let's pay a nurse to come and take care of you because I don't have time for you. Even though you wiped my ass, you took care of me and stuff at the
Mhm.
times that I needed you most. And I feel that was where we had a lot of collapse in family structure, you
Right.
know?
And so we are so bifurcated and so reduced to such a nuclear cellular level, is that everybody today is saying like, well, the nuclear family is where it's at. And it's like, no, it isn't. It was, and it's certainly better than what we're doing, the nuclear family. And obviously, like, well, women's rights are important and women have the right to vote and women have the right to go into the workplace. And it's like, you talk to any woman today and they're like, I want a man rich enough to where I don't have to work. And I want him to put babies in me and put babies out of my body and have me take care of them in a nuclear family circlet. But what it really comes down to is like what you're talking about with the elderly and the actual history, is that it ain't about the nuclear family. It's about it takes a village to raise a child. We still use that axiom, right? Like, you have to have all of that interconnectivity in your neighborhood with your family and otherwise. Like, I had the advantage of knowing my great grandparents, and they came from such a different fucking time, is that I still retain the genetic memory of the things that they told me that were true. And now we're going to get back into the King James Bible. Is that today, and you know this quote. Let me pull up this quote. So this was, which Rothschild was this? Mayor Amschel Bauer Rothschild was the one that was quoted as saying, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws." You're familiar with that quote, yeah? Like, you've heard that a lot. Like, it's something that when I speak it, it resonates with you. The problem with it is that what we out of Ireland know and remember, either via oral history or genetic memory, is that this is exactly what King James said, the man that penned the Bible, is that there are still the words of God within the King James Bible. And I think it's wonderful for anybody that's able to get themselves a copy at Walmart. However, that is the iteration of the good book that is readily available at a Walmart. That is what generates Walmarts. That is what generates big box, square life living. Because whereas it was Mayor Amschel Bauer Rothschild, who is accredited of having said, "Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws," King James himself, "You will have no king before God," right? And yet, one of the most popular iterations of the good word is that of a king, King James. What you don't know is that he is accredited of having said, like, "I care not who reads this book," because people were becoming more literate after Martin Luther and the printing press and everything. He said, "I care not who reads the word, because they will never appreciate the fact that it is printed in my flesh and writ in my blood." And that's the King James.
So, I mean, okay, for those of you who wonder, I do study out of the King James, and the purpose for it is to have a universal language barrier with those of the faith now, and because it has been taught in many different types of churches, many different types of faiths. The main book I turn to for that is the Sefer, or Divine Scrolls, the Divine Books. It's Hebrew. It's the Dead Sea Scrolls redeciphered, and it replaced the Aleph Toph, which was removed more than 10,000 times. It replaces the Hebrew names and places, even of the chapters. It replaces all the books taken out from the Apocrypha and many others that were not canonized by the Vatican, which scripture, by definition of scripture, is what has come to pass. So some of the books that they removed don't make sense to me, because according to those books, what they're describing has come to pass. So by definition of what scripture is, it is scripture, but the Vatican canonized them as non-scripture, and it's been accepted in many different churches and globally. So things like the Book of Enoch, Jubilees 2, and Bell the Dragon, the letters of Joseph and Mary, the Book of Thomas, these things. So in the Sefer, there's 87 books as opposed to the 66 books in the King James Bible. Okay, and you have to look at Revelations, and I'm trying to remember where the other place it says it, that about adding and taking. It's in Luke, adding and taking away from Scripture. Okay, so if you look at books that came before the King James, like the Ethiopian Christian Bible, which predates the King James Bible by 800 years, you have the Septuagint by the Greeks, and the hell they call it, it's like the Vulgate or something like that from Spain for Latin, or the Vulgate, or I can't remember how they pronounce it, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is because you have the books of Enoch, you have Jubilees, these other books that I was mentioning are in a book that's 800 years older than the King James. So for him to have removed those books, right, It's in the scripture saying that you shouldn't add or take away from scripture. So for him to go and call it the completed works, which I do see that it was best widespread, I guess. You know,
Don't
because there's a
let
lot of
my milquetoast, hate-filled white ass detract from anybody's faith whatsoever. I had this discussion with somebody who was saying that the King James is the end-all be-all, and it's like, no, that is a book of conquest. It is perfectly valid to study. It is one of the most wholesome echelons of self-betterment and investigation and knowledge that a person could get at a Walmart. Okay, like I'm not saying that to just like throw the baby out with the bathwater and say like, well, the fact that you can get it at Walmart isn't really that. No, what I mean to say is that it completely accidentally is a happy accident. And Martha Russo, she taught me all about happy accidents in terms of art. But happy accidents happen all the time. Is that the King James Bible is the happiest accident in terms of it is still the good word, it is still the good book, but it accomplishes acts of genocide, treason against one's own soul, and colonialism simply by omission. There's nothing in it that says like, hey, go forth and kill. No religious text would ever say that. Like, the King James didn't insert anything new, but what it accomplished, it was able to do so by omission. What is it? The book of Luke, the book of Giants, the book of Enoch. We could just go on and on in terms of the things that were omitted from it. And so our greatest sin, I feel like one of the cardinal sins should be omission. So you would have lust, greed, envy, wrath. I feel like omission has to be a cardinal sin because via omission and the things that we aren't aware of, despite the evils that we commit and contribute to in ignorance, that's got to be a cardinal sin. And that's exactly what the King James Bible did. And it's fucked up because, again, it was a method of conquest against the Western indigenous, largely the Mexicans and the South Americans and the Central Americans. Didn't really take with the Native Americans, and so they just wiped out their food source via the buffalo. But there is very much an echo with the Irish there, is that no matter how many doors they kicked in, they were overjoyed, like, hey, yeah, thanks for wiping them out. We fucking hate the McGillicuddies. We're the McGinties. You want a beer? And they're like, what the fuck? Where's your centralized power of government? And they're like, I don't know what those words mean. Do you want a beer or not? Otherwise, get the fuck out. So they seeded all of Ireland with Catholicism. And the Irish and the Mexicans took to Catholicism. If you think of Catholicism today, two biggest proponents, the Irish and the Mexicans, two of the most largely conquered people. You see a lot of it in Korea too, do you not? Like you see a lot of like Catholic, Christian, Korean. Mm-hmm. And okay, it's the same fucking story, is that this was a book of conquest, but they put the very acts of conquest into their hands because they realized like there's no centralization. We need to make this centralized. And then even when they did, it became more of like an animus kind of nature worship it made like a happy love baby with Christ and the Bible, right? And that's true of both Mexican and Irish culture. So when that wasn't enough, magically and seemingly overnight, you had the potato famine. And that shit killed millions, untold millions of people. And that's when Albion, England, could really step in. And because Catholicism wasn't enough, they started seeding the island with Protestantism. And so today, you go to any bar, you buy an Irish car bomb, that's where it comes from. The rift between the Protestantism and the Catholicism. And that is how Albion conquered the Isle.
So I want to go into something that is probably going to make people hate on the show, maybe even me, but I kind of want to go into Yeshua. So first of all, let me start with the King James Bible. Okay. This book was published in the year 1611. It refers to him as Jesus, okay, because the letter J didn't exist in the English alphabet till the year 1634. Okay, Jesus is from the Greek, which means hail Zeus, the anointed, right? Christos means the anointed. Constantine changed it to that name, first of all. Now, here, why I'm breaking it down is because here's the importance of this. Story was an allegory to give us something to live up to give us a reference, like Plato says, to tell us a story, to allow it to resonate better with us, for us to receive the values of the story. It's better to be told with the story and characters than it is to tell us outright. We will receive it better. Now, and I'm not trying to bash this, the importance of Yeshua is, yes, representation of years. There's some occult symbolism behind the purpose of characters like Yeshua. And sorry, my voice is kind of cracking still because, like I told you, Adam, I lost my voice for 2.5 days, and it's just starting to come back. Like
for anybody outside of Colorado, we just had a week of hell where it was legit negative 20 degrees. It was Siberian, out of space, cold. Yeah, you're good. You're good.
So, Yeshua is representation of years, Horus of hours. These are sacred occult time measurements. Yes, to our consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. And they're secret occult languages. Okay, so if you truly want to understand spirituality, it is not in one book nor one place, right? Paul says it best when he says that people in the end times are going to say Christ is here, Christ is there, and Christ is in this place, but he's not. You know, if you can't find him here, you're never going to find it. You know, it's just like heaven. It exists within us. It is not a place. You know, this is why I talk about the Christos oil and stuff. This is reaching a Christ level consciousness. This is for us to be on par with the story of Yeshua.
And so what do you suppose the association between the very word in English, yes, associated as positive affirmation?
Exactly.
Not
yes.
Associated with Christ. Does not echoes of, say, Dr. Seuss factor into the sus, right?
Dude, he was very occult. Remember, I was telling you something about him having to, what did he do? Something with Aleister Crowley. Like, wrote a story that is like loosely based off of something, or Aleister Crowley did something with the Dr. Seuss book and proved it's occultism or something. I can't remember.
About, fuck me, dude. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, no, that's what it was. Aleister Crowley broke down a few different Dr. Seuss stories and the occult meanings behind them, right? What were they? I mean, one of them had to do with God. Sam I Am, okay? And I am, right? The great I am. And so it's referring to God, but it's showing a home without a mom. But they're talking about the bed knocking on the wall, and there's all this really hidden stuff in there.
No. So Sam I Am is it functions within gematria.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I went down this rabbit hole just recently. Sam I Am is writ just the way that it is. Dr. Seuss was fucking with gematria. And he basically wrote like a new extra cartoony testament. It's one of the first pieces of literature that interacts with the gematria the way that the very foundation of the gematria worked with the Old Testament.
Well, I believe it, man. I really believe that. And the fact that Aleister Crowley was talking about it, you know, there's some occult symbolism there because, you know, Aleister Crowley came from the Order of the New Dawn, which is a Rosicrucian order. To have formed his own order you know, and I get it. Rosicrucians are going to get a bad rap because, and I want to bring this up on here, you know, you look at the
Any of the
Georgia
truly powerful
Guidestones.
institutions, the Masons, the Rosicrucians, the what do you call the Hindu sect? Whatever religious basis that
Vedics.
actually have strong institutions, lasting institutions, they will always get a bad rap because they actually have history to defer to.
Well, and I mean, I say because the Georgia Guidestones, now that they're torn down, people can't really go to them other than pictures. But it said that it was created by R.C. Christian, right? That is code for Rosicrucian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you and I have had conversations before, is that, I grew up with the guy who was Hasidic, right? Is the term for like the really adept, evolved, involved Jewish person, the Hasidic Jew, right? But his dad was one of 7 priests around the world. Like there are only 7 Hasidic Jewish priests, pastors, fathers. I don't know. Like it all gets fucking fused with the Irish background of it. But he was always saying that there is absolutely no way that we would have a historic record of a bum. And our entire concept and story of Yahshua ben Yosef, Jesus Christ, is that of some white Californianite bum. And that's just not, you already have problems with that. He must have been at least like partially black, right? Um, and so the idea that David was always telling, of course, his name would be David, even, is that Christ and Mary were royalty of Jerusalem. And I wonder, I don't know if we hash this out now, but I'm just going to go hard in the paint and fucking consider it, is that when you mention that you don't think that the historical character, which obviously you have like a different dialogue and interpretation, is that there was a Yahshua ben Yosef, there is also a Christ consciousness and energy that had something to do with the historical character, but not, it wasn't one and the same, right?
Yeah, it's like let's take it to Hermes Trismegistus. Okay. Since we've talked about him a lot on the podcast and how he exists in many cultures, right? As Thoth, or he exists as Hermes, he exists as Mercury, and he exists as Enoch. Now the thing is that according to Rudolf Steiner, in ancient occult text, it was said that the first Hermes Trismegistus did reach this godlike understanding and higher consciousness. And that's why they called him thrice greatest, right? Because he had merged mind, body, and spirit as one being.
Much
And,
like the Holy Trinity. Is that not prevalent in the concept of the Holy Trinity or Hermes Trismegistus, the thricefold, right?
so going back to the beginning of the podcast, remember I brought up that every ancient culture was fascinated with merging of the mind, body, and spirit, right? As a trinity. And it's important. So we have to view that as important information, important knowledge. If all of these ancients viewed it as important, we have to. So with Rudolf Steiner was saying that because Hermes had achieved this, after he passed on, after 1,000 or something years that he lived on through alchemy and whatnot, and through meditation and the Christo soil, every person that took over his teachings took on the name of Hermes, thinking that this would give them the consciousness of Hermes by giving themselves that name. So we know that he's a supposed mythological character because there's no proof of a true Hermes Trismegistus. Okay. And with that being said, I want to go back to other characters like who else is referenced in multiple things?
Saint
Yeah,
Germain.
like Zeus or Thor,
Yeah.
right? They're very similar. Um, Many gods have similar traits, similar weapons, similar abilities. And I feel that there's a lot of things throughout our history that just get retranslated into something else. And not saying that these people didn't see these beings, but I'm saying that there's a lot of similarities. And again, like I said before, if you want to know true spirituality, you're not going to find it in the one place. It was hidden by esoteric occultists throughout all religions. So, I mean, I can't vouch for this book 100% because I haven't got to look through it myself. And I've been talking to you, Adam, about wanting to look at it. But there's a book called The Hertz Book. You can download the PDF for $34.95, or you can buy the book outright for $111 something dollars. But they take things from all the religions and they basically complete the pattern. And a lot of things have resonated with a lot of things I believe, or I've said on this podcast, or I've said years before on Gentleman's Bureau. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we're the only ones on the path. You know what I mean? There's a resonance. And when synchronicity is when all these things happen in a resonance, it's because we're on a like-minded path. Okay. That's why I said that our spirit guides us sometimes. If you've seen Donnie Darko, Adam, and I know you have, but for the viewers out there, and spoiler alert, yeah, the bubble, right? And it's time.
Yep.
And that's time travel, because in the bubble would be existing the wormhole, the warp time. Right? This is time that could have been, but you're following the linear path to it. Because remember, he asked, what if the path is divine by God? And the guy said, there's no way you could see your path mapped out. But he's all, what if it was divine? Right? What if it was intended? This is the path that it's supposed to go. And he's like, that's impossible. When he's talking to the Noah Wiley character, remember? And he's like, this conversation's over.
Yeah.
Well, he's seeing these bubbles come out of their chest. And like in one scene, his dad's sitting there watching a game or something, and the thing comes out and it goes all the way around the wall and around the kitchen over and to the fridge. And his dad follows the thing and goes and gets something out. And then he goes back and sits down, but the bubble goes back the other way because it comes out his back. While he's standing in front of the fridge or wherever, so it comes out of his back and it goes back to the route to the couch where he goes and sits. But there's many scenes where he sees the bubble, which leads into the mirror where he's poking it with Frank, laughing, and then he starts poking it with the knife in the eye.
Yeah.
Because remember, Frank, okay, so spoiler alert, that movie's so beautifully done. The book that they're talking about and the theories they talk about in time travel, they're true. And it's cool that they hid it in plain sight in this way. And if you understand the concept of time travel, what they're talking about from the Roberta, whatever her name was, the old lady at the mailbox, kept going back and checking, right? Her book on time that he was given by the teacher, Noah Wiley, who doesn't want to talk about it no more, is actual theories on time travel. So in the movie, he dies in the beginning, right? But he didn't, because he woke up in the golf course, because an engine that they can't figure out where it came from, because it came from another time in the space-time continuum, was sucked into a wormhole, somehow broke through our time stream, lands on his bed, but he wasn't there, which caused this whole this whole circumstances of events to happen that shouldn't have happened, and all these relationships that were affected because he was still alive, and affected in a negative way. Everybody was affected in such a negative way because he shouldn't have existed. So Frank is basically his spirit guide, guiding him back to the moment, back in time, to end up back in his bed so he dies and fixes everything.
Right. And that is very much like the narrative of Christ. Like, something that resonates with me, and so we've been talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, like we're talking about what resonates with us. Something you had said like resonated with me so fucking strongly is that I meet very God-fearing people. And I think that that's a contradiction in terms of the idea that you would fear God, like the all of creation and the great creator and made us in his image and everything. Like, I don't have a relationship with God, Christ, or the Trinity at all. What I do have a relationship with is the word, is that there are experiences within the book, say the Sermon on the Mount. I experience that. I feel as though I have been there. I have experienced it. Like Samson and Delilah. I feel like it resonates with me so much that I get it. The thing that you said that really resonated with me is that back in the day, crucifixion, not a thing. It just wasn't a thing. Like, This man,
They hung
Yahshua ben
people on
Yosef, was hung
trees.
from a tree. He was hung from a
Yep.
tree. Okay, so the narrative is that he was tied up on a cross. And now today, God-fearing Christians who, this is what disturbs me, is that so many of these God-fearing Christians actually worship the symbol of the torture device. Like, that's a device of torture. And it, like, historically, he would not have been nailed to it. He would have been tied to it. That's what they did. That's how adept a torture device it is. But more than likely, back in the day, he was somebody strung up in a tree. Why are they going to bother with this fucking thing? Now, we understand the relevance of the cross. Like, I was showing you the genetic markers of whatever it is, whatever protein, the bonding glue that creates like all animal life is in the shape of a cross. Doesn't have anything to do with that history.
I want to take it back for a second, but first I want to touch on this. So what you were saying with the King James, but not so much the King James, more or less the Vatican, right? An institution that led a campaign to kill people and enslave them and make them worship in the way that they perceived. They turned the cross into a torture device symbolism. Now, the cross, which was the Ankh to begin with, and this is when you understand esoteric symbolism. I want to go back to Dr. Robert Gilbert and the Netters, the NTRs. Okay. Now, the reason why they're holding an Ankh, which is a cross, when you understand that vibrational resonance from the fit, it makes a cross shape like the Celtic cross. Why do you think they have the Celtic knots, the Celtic crosses? These could be created with a bladder, and you take 5 vibrations, oscillating vibrations that are slightly off, and this bladder will vibrate. And it takes multiple vibrations from different directions, not just one, and it will generate a cross on this bladder. Okay, now the cross is the energy of living energy creation, like the Netters, like I say, that they're the consciousness of living nature. Now, with this thing, it's also represented by the color green. Green is creation. When you understand colors, then you understand how to manipulate these energies and to ask the Netters for help. Now, the reason why they put the circle on the Ankh, on the cross, because the cross represents life and creation. The Ankh has the circle on top of it because for whatever resonant reason that you put a circle on it, now this device can actually physically create life in front of it. It has the energy. So the Egyptians, and Dr. Robert Gilbert talked about this on how profound their knowledge was with spirituality. They would poke a hole in the tombs, right? And they would put a wooden doll on the other side. And what that allowed for, because see, life is the green force, okay? You would find pendulums inside of Egyptian tombs, correct? And what you'll find in museums is they would say it was an item of ritual sacrifice or ritual, some kind of ritual thing. They can't explain it. So what these pendulums did, okay, is they somehow generated the antithesis of the green energy of life, which is when you can see it, we can't, is a neon green. But when the human eye can visibly see it, it's more of a gray. And I know I'm getting into a tangent here, but this light can penetrate through layers of lead and steel. Okay, so this wooden doll on the other side, it can capture the soul and it can use that energy in the negative energy, breaking down things around. This is how they prevented grave robbers from robbing all the gold. So in the case of the King Tutankhamun, okay, when that tomb was opened, this energy that's in this doll can be used as the negative green energy that comes out. Now, see, if you're not wearing, kings and queens, they said they would wear amulets or rings or something with a special talisman that would counteract this negative energy so they could exist in these areas that were made magically to preserve negative energies. What this neon green light does when it penetrates us is it breaks down what it is that's holding us together, whatever our spirit, whatever, in a way that only a person who's educated in Taoism, Qigong, Hindu culture would be able to diagnose what was happening to you. They wouldn't understand the cellular breakdown of what was going on in you. And this is why all the people who opened King Tut's tomb died, except for one man who was wearing a ring that came from early Egypt from one of the king or queen's tombs, and it was a ring that was said to be a talisman that counteracted that negative energy, which is the only reason why he walked away when everyone else died. And Dr. Robert Gilbert's talking about how they harnessed this energy enough to where the spirit in death could possess that doll to an extent, not your full spirit, but enough of it to become like a booby trap, to use that energy to break down someone else's spiritual energy in ways that we can't explain. You know what I
Bro,
mean? Because it's a
fall for
vibration
every
resonance.
potential booby trap if it meant that there were boobies. But I fall for all the booby traps, and I'm just missing out on boobies all day. Yeah, when you were talking about like just so many things, is when you look back in time, and this is what I love about Tartaria or all of these ancient concepts, is that I don't have a relationship with Christ or God. I'm a godless heathen, axe grinding Irishman, right? Like that's we kind of wrote the book on that. And in terms of writing books, during the Dark Ages, the people to maintain written literature were the Irish. And so many of the books that you have, we took it. It's much like the fuck is that guy's name? Terence McKenna. When Terence McKenna, the psychonaut, went up into Nepal and he met whatever shaman, like basically the fucking what do you call the head shaman? The guy that's like been excommunicated from Nepal and the Himalayas. The fuck is that guy called? The yogi, the whatever. Like he met the ultimate yogi, and Terence McKenna offers the yogi LSD, and the yogi takes it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we know this. We don't need substance to get there. We just do it via breath control." Well, it's a lot like when Albion, if you look at the history of the King James Bible, it was a weapon of war. It's the only way that they were ever going to get that thorn out of their side that was Ireland. They never could figure out how to conquer it because you got up like a bunch of fucking assholes that just don't know how to be conquered, right? So they needed a unified language. But when they brought it over, the Irish were like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. You know, it's all about the effeminate. And then Albion, the English, were like, well, no, it's about Christ. And it's like, well, yeah, but Christ's mom, Mary, and Christ's girlfriend or whatever, also Mary. That seems to have a lot to do with women and women empowerment. And England was like, you guys just don't seem to be getting it. Like we're gonna try this in Mexico. Mexicans did the same thing. Like, oh yeah, marry the mother, marry the girlfriend, whatever. And England again was like, fuck you, we're going to send a bunch of diseased Spaniards over here to just completely obliterate the entire population. 90% of the Earth's population in the time of the conquistador, which Albion allowed after the 100 Years' War, they were like, yeah, you, the French, you guys go have fun. Oh, there's a splinter colony with this asshole named, wait, what the fuck are their names? Like the OG Kennedys, the founding fathers. They come over. In England, they were like, yeah, all right, we could suffer that too. And then we got busy enough that the War of 1812, England, Albion came back, took it over. Um, Man, I had an overarching point. I just got lost in the fucking reeds. It is like what you were talking about in terms of cultural influence when you kept bringing up the color green. Is that can you think of any other culture associated with green more than you would Ireland?
No. And then, like I told you, they have the Celtic cross. That same thing is exactly what forms. Okay, this comes from vibration, energy. Everything has resonance. Okay, so let's go back to the principle of vibration, right?
Mm.
All matter vibrates. And I mean, I've said it before on here, the all is that very vibration that exists in every single molecular thing on this existence. And that is the proof of the all's fingerprint within every living thing. Okay, it's the vibration. Vibration is creation. I mean, I told you this before, and I was watching it on what show? I can't remember, but of all shows, I think it was Ancient Aliens, but they were talking about this volcano erupting, okay, underwater, and they talked about another volcano that was erupting on islands. They were comparing these different volcanoes around the world and creation. What they said about it is it creates a sound that we don't hear, but the sound that is destruction and chaos before our eyes, that what we're witnessing, but there's a sound coming from it, is the very sound and vibration of creation.
You
You
could
know,
talk about any iteration of the Bible, but what the Bible really lays down in the book of Genesis is that everything comes from speech.
okay, so let me take it further. Genesis, okay, this is true occult knowledge, Adam. The G in the compass and the square is not for geometry, it is not for God, it is for Genesis, for creation. That is why it's a G, because there is creation and manifestation. And like you said, through our voice, through vibration, there's creation, but through intent. And it's the Genesis. Genesis is creation. That is the secret to the occult.
I love this narrative, and I'll never buy into anything wholesale. Like, I am actually jealous of people who have a direct relationship with God or Christ or Gishna or Vishnu or fucking Buddha or whatever. It certainly seems like something that lacks in my life, but I love all of the information, and that's what I like to interact with. And we kind of touched base with what it is that makes people unique. We're just like a bunch of hairless beach monkeys at the end of the day, but there is something special about us. But when it comes to noises and vibrations, is that we could learn from, say, elephants. The fuck do you call them? What do you call an elephant? Pachyderms. Pachyderms. They have such a resonant voice, but they intentionally focus the noises that they make into the earth. An elephant that knows how to communicate into the earth, they can communicate hundreds, if not thousands, of miles away from themselves. And they know that they're doing this intentionally. Cetaceans, whales, dolphins, beluga, they do the same thing. Is that like some of the singiest whales, like sperm whale makes such an utteration. They have like vocal cords or vocal boxes that if you were within like 8 miles of a sperm whale when it gives its full call, it would crush your body. But they do this thing, sperm whales and uh, humpback whales, they specifically point their faces down and sing into the ocean floor. They know the resonance. They know what they're doing, and they do it on purpose. And this is something like back to your shoes and back to being connected to your little monkey feet and everything, is that when you say you want to get back to your roots, well, that's your root.
Yep. No, and exactly. And Sam, shout out Sam again. The type of meditation I told you that he taught me, that is a very easy meditation for anyone to do. And for those of you who didn't see the episode where I brought it up, I'd like to bring it up again because it's real simple. You could do this anywhere, anytime. As you're sitting there, just feel your feet on the floor and imagine that there's roots growing from the bottom of your feet deep into the earth. And you can go as deep as you want within the earth, just connect with the energy. And when you feel that you're rooted within the earth, then start bringing that energy up your legs, and you'll start to feel a tingle in your toes, your ankles, up to your knees, your thighs, your hips, and it will move up. For me, once it gets here, it just feels like it's an open weight. Like when I was saying that this is a receiver, it definitely feels just completely open. And I brought this up before, like through my meditation, I feel like them people on Batman Forever when the Riddler's like sucking their brains, and you feel like they have like this energy coming from their head, right?
Good
Well, it
reference.
feels like the energy from the earth is rooting out to me, to my spirit, connecting to it, if that makes sense. So
We're all
I,
reeds of
instead of being,
grass blowing in the wind of time.
yeah, so instead of being like a marionette puppet where my soul is doing this to my body, it's like you're connecting. When I feel that feeling, it's like it's becoming one.
And you're connected in which shape?
Yeah, I know. I didn't mean to do it intentionally, but it ended up being
But
like a cross, which is the
that's the
symbol of
point. That's more so the
creation.
point. Yeah. They actually animate that really well in Evangelion, right? Like when you have
Yeah,
the burst of the AT fields and it, you know,
even with the Lance of Longinus, remember when they had
you always say Longinus, and it sounds like sexual or something. Longinus.
Yeah, I know, but I've also heard it pronounced as Longinus. Like I don't even remember. Oh, isn't it in I don't remember if it's in Hellboy or Constantine, how they say it that
Both,
way, but
both,
anyways,
both, both. Yeah.
um
And again, like we did a deep dive on that as to it seems like they have the actual spear of destiny, and it sees itself represented through Hollywood. Is that they are literally the spear of destiny was important. Like Constantine used it. I'm trying to think of the other great dictator from back in the day. But the thing about the spear of destiny is that it always must be seen by the masses. And so they'll parade it around. And it's interesting because you will see it in Constantine and Hellboy, and it seems to be the actual artifact.
yeah. When they crucified Ava 1 at the end.
Yeah.
Remember with the whole cross and all of that, when they used all the other Avas to connect to it.
Mm.
No, but
The
yeah,
white
when they attack,
Avas.
there's always a cross.
They were the white Avas, but they didn't have a pilot, and they all looked like whales. They had the whale-like mouths, you know?
No, but the crosses only happen when the angels attacked.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It didn't happen when the Avas attacked back. It was when the angels made an attack, then it would make a cross like of lightning.
Mm-hmm. That
Because
fucking.
that was like the symbol of the angels in that,
You really
if you
gotta wonder,
remember.
like, are we so goofed up that we're into the same show that Alex Jones is? Like, Joe Rogan, all of this has been written down. You gotta see Neon Genesis Evangelion. It's very important that you do this.
It is. For those of you who haven't seen it, check it out. It's freaking one of the most phenomenal animes of all time.
Mm-hmm. But it really just explains so much about we all have our own fourth wall. Like today, we talk about the fourth wall as something that happens in media, that these media characters invented characters within their own substrate and substructure, their own infrastructure and their own flora and biome. They're able to break their existence and interact with us. Deadpool is perfect example for that, is that he'll look at the camera and say, "Hey everybody, like I see you there. We're making a sequel soon." And everybody loves Deadpool. But that's also something that's true of us, is that is it a fourth wall anymore, or is it a fifth wall? Is it the central dogma in Evangelion, where they go beneath the city, they attain central dogma, and that's where things get a little unwound, a little wiry, a little fluffy, right? Like existence is kind of like a different thing, and that's where they keep Lilith crucified by the Lance of Longinus. But when they enter terminal dogma, they're trying to figure out a way to survive the fourth or fifth wall or whatever it is that we all experience. Like, this is the thing that I bring up regularly that upsets me so much about the billionaires, is that everybody, like a bunch of my fucking coworker chongos, are like, well, Bill Gates has saved millions of lives with his vaccine, and it's like, no, no, nope. That man wants to blacken out the sun because he got bullied as a kid and his feelings are still so hurt that he legit wants to reduce the population. And if you actually listen to everything that he says, that's his whole goal. Like, oh, well, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation actually had a lot of precedence in terms of helping us develop vaccines. And it's like, you mean the mRNA genetic devices that they developed literally within a single day? And then they told everybody de facto across the planet that we take the soup without thinking twice. And if you don't, well, You might lose your job. You might lose your home. We might take your fucking kids away from you. Are you going to take the soup? A lot of people didn't. A lot of people did.
Dude, let's
But
go to
with
China, man. Right now,
what?
they can't even leave their homes. You know what I mean? They're on such quarantine. You're not allowed to step outside or you get arrested.
If
You know,
that's
we talked about this with Lane.
yeah, yeah. With the
And
bill,
I shared some TikTok videos from 77 Truthy to our Lane video in the comment section for those of you that want to check out. There's some 2 videos I believe that I attached to it that actually show footage of things going on in China there right now.
I just don't get it. I had this conversation with Lane. We went to Walgreens. He was hungover. I was still drinking. And we went to Walgreens so he could get himself a breathalyzer. And as we're buying it, we were just kind of talking about the whole societal state influence situation. And it's like, for the life of me, I don't understand how China has such a humongous population. They have the most ancient recorded culture in recorded history, and yet they are so easily influenced by the state. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. They're just so easily cowed to have drones flying by like, oh, your QR code shows red. Better go stand in line to get your PCR test to make sure you're not like a sick person.
Well, that's why I'm saying there's importance to Tartaria because, like I said before, the Great Wall wasn't there for the Mongolians. And whatever happened, whatever transpired that was lost in the annals of history to do with Tartaria, I believe was the beginning of the enslavement of this world, right? Of the population and to become dominated by superiors the way that we were and be submissive. It started with China. I believe that totally. China and Russia, that's where it started. And then they used that model and they put it across the earth. You know what I mean?
Well, it's very much like what we've spoken about before is the difference between like Lemuria, and Atlantis, or Cain and Abel. So I am right at the precipice of Port Normal right now, my project. I'm gonna have to edit that out because I don't want anybody getting up into my fucking Kool-Aid. But Davicachis, his whole project after Project Heritage, that is the foothold, the last bastions of humanity, is that he was raised by his adopted father, who was like a priest out of the Vatican and had access to all the information. Is that you will always see remnants of the cult of Cain. And China right now is very much Cain like energy, but it's bizarre to me because Chinese culture is so able. It's so very much able. The Chinese state,
Dude,
1,000% Cain. Chinese
so
culture, 1,000% able.
according to a story by Rudolf Steiner, tying back to the scripture, the Rosicrucians came from the bloodline of Cain. And through Hiram, the builder of Solomon, right? And you have the queen who comes and she wants to meet the builder who built these
I really
exquisite things. So
a queen that comes. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, that's what she said. But um, no, so I can't think of her name right now. But she comes, she wants to meet the builder who built the great temple of Solomon, right? And it was Hiram with his builders. And it was said that they killed him and hid him away. And Solomon, he felt this and he knew something was wrong and he wanted to find out what happened to Hiram. And even though they had a scuffle because he was jealous of Hiram, because the queen loved Hiram and they ended up forming a relationship. But these 2 builders killed Hiram in secret. And when the body was found, there was a word uttered. And this word is only known to initiates of the Rosicrucians. It became a secret. But this whole story ties into the Brotherhood of Cain that came after Cain and Abel, which started into Masonry and split the world into 2 divisions at this point, right? So remember, the 1 gives us 2. So this 2 gives us a reference. But even like Rudolf Steiner says, to only have a true reference point, you have to have 12-point reference. So this is referring to like a cube. Okay, a cube has 12 sides. Okay, so this makes a three-dimensional object, which allows us to see all sides, all perspectives of the event. Okay, so when you take Cain and Abel and you split the two, now you had two different groups of Masons, right, that had emerged. And through all of this is this secret society, according to Rudolf Steiner. And again, man, a lot of this stuff is because things are lost through history. Rudolf Steiner, the work he did, I mean, for those of you who haven't listened to his lectures, go to Steiner Press on YouTube and check out some of his lectures. This man is a genius, and I can't even stress how much of a genius he is and the work that he's done through many cultures, many different avenues of philosophy, of science, spirituality, and the way he breaks it down, it's just freaking phenomenal. I can't even, like, there's not another person in our lifetime that is like that. Like, to me, and I'm not trying to compare him to Christ, and I'm not trying to put him on a pedestal like that, but that type of consciousness, that type of understanding is what I believe what followers of people of Hermes Trismegistus saw in Hermes to say that he was thrice greatest. Right. And this is what I find in Rudolf Steiner. And it's why I talk about him a lot on the podcast. And he really influenced my beliefs. So let's go a little bit forward with this. I haven't really unveiled this officially on the podcast, but because of my interest in Rudolf Steiner and his lectures and of Manly P. Hall and others, I joined AMORC on December 6th. It's the ancient mystical order of the Rosicrucians. So I'm now considered a postulate, working my stages into a neophyte to become a first degree Rosicrucian and to continue ascending and learning in my studies of consciousness, meditation, and spirituality. Obviously, I still believe in the all. I believe in God. But yes, Rudolf Steiner led me on a path that had led me to officially join the Rosicrucian order, which, I mean, truth be told, I would really like to go to Vienna and find the schools of Rudolf Steiner like Dr. Robert Gilbert did, because of the teachings of Rudolf Steiner, just the way that they've influenced me, his work, his explanations. I mean, Adam, you brought this up on the podcast, how excited I was and after certain lectures and the way that it had fucking just unlocked many different types of knowledges for me just listening to this man.
You know what you did? It was a couple of minutes ago now already, is you were making a point about 1 verse 2, Abel versus Cain, and you did this.
Yeah, like the devil horns, I know.
No, not
And
like
the reason why I did
at all.
it
Okay,
is
so
because I didn't want to
you've
do the
seen
call of the
Inglourious
Nords.
Bastards. You've seen Inglourious Bastards. Like Quentin Tarantino had it completely right to where Magneto, what's his fucking name? The German three, exactly. This
3
is
versus
3.
3, yep.
Michael
Amazing.
Fassbender gave it this 3. What you did, the 1 and the 2, is that is a very central Asiatic concept. Is that it is the alpha and the omega. This is
The
1
Taurus.
and this is 2. And it is torrid. It is very torrid. And you're talking about, like, this is what's interesting about, like, our entire relationship is that I saw you is that Koreans are grasslanders. Y'all are agriculturalists, and you tend your fields in lower elevations, whereas the Mongolians are the opposite. The Mongolians
in
are like,
Korea, especially south, there are mountains. They're really high and it's colder than Colorado. My friend who served 3 years there,
oh yeah, completely.
he
But
was like,
it's like the difference is that when we're talking about China and Japan and everything else, is that a lot of that Asiatic culture stems out of Korea. When we're talking about Tartaria, there was something older than Tartaria, like the Tartars, like whatever it was that predominates Russia. It were these people that were acclimated to cold fucking climates. If you look at everything about your physiology, it is somebody that is built for cold fucking climate, right? Like,
well,
but
remember the most dangerous game referred to them as Cossacks. Remember, and that was a term used as when we were children. And the Cossacks were from the Russia area and they were giants with beards. Remember? They're like
Yep.
big, burly, giant men, like 7 to 9 feet tall.
Yep. What's going on? I'm trying to charge my fucking computer. Come in. Charge.
I don't know. Just as you were talking, it reminded me of the Most Dangerous Game. I don't even know why. For whatever reason, that fucking book came into my head, and I remember reading that as a kid. How much that shit influenced me, you know, man hunting man, you know, becoming the ultimate predator. You know, that's what that story's about, essentially.
We all have, there we go, unique advantages. We all have unique backstories, right? And this is what upsets so many fucking people, is that everything I do in life is I'll just see somebody and it's like, hey, are your people Creole? And he's like, what do you mean my people? He's like, no, I'm Vietnamese and French. And it's like, but you come from South Carolina, right? And they're like, yeah, but I'm also Vietnamese. And I was like, the Vietnamese and the French are Creole culture, and everybody gets offended. It's like, well, the fuck are you, white boy? And it's like, yeah, I'm just unassuming Irish German, like the majority of white assholes on the face of the fucking planet. I'm sorry to upset people, but these are
the
these are the things I
Creole
love to talk
people
about.
were the slaves, and the slaves who mixed with the French. But the French who lived there as the swamp people are the ones who became the Cajuns.
Mm-hmm.
So the Creole were the slaves
Mm.
who mixed with the French settlers. And that's why there's a difference between Cajun and Creole, even in their cooking, just slight differences, you know? And they get real offended if you say that they're the same thing. And like I said, my grandpa's Cajun, so he's from Louisiana and in the bayous and shit like that. But
I don't know how
so
that
I
shit
get it.
shows. Maybe we'll just have to have a cooking episode or something that like your Cajun heritage really shines through, but there is also something about you that shines Cajun as much as there's something about you that shines Mongolian. You're what,
Because
six
that's
foot one?
why
You're
the
fucking 6 foot.
Creole, they have more like soul food, and they have a lot of cultural history tied to voodoo.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
A
Because
lot of
they
it
came from
is
the slaves.
Santeria, and Santeria has an interpretation of the King James in a way that is like very interesting. Like it's very attractive. Like Santeria is a very, I get it. I get why people are into it, but because Santeria focuses on the saints, right? Do I have that right? Is that Santeria is very much of like kind of canonizing all of the saints and idolizing all of them. Like you have Saint Peter and he's associated with dog ownership, and you have whatever, like all of these different iterations that have
So
like.
I've heard of it, but because I was always raised in a more Baptist, you know, type faith, it's not. I was never really raised Catholic, so with that, they're more in the worship of idols, saints, things of that nature, which I was never familiar with because I was only brought up that you only prayed or worshiped Jesus or God. Which now at this point, I would tell everyone you don't pray to Jesus, you pray to God. You know, you pray to the all. Like you're, to me, it's idol worship to pray to Jesus, even though you want to say that He is Him. It's putting an idol before Him. And I get the explanation that we're saying that unless you're pure of heart, you're not going to see the face of God. So humans only can perceive God as the man that He came to in earth, which is Jesus, which you're worshiping Caesar Borgia. You're not worshiping the actual Messiah, right? You're worshiping a caricature of
A
another
mask.
person, Caesar's son.
A
You
mask.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, or not Caesar, is it Constantine's son? Or I can't remember, Caesar Borgia or whatever. That's the
Right.
guy that they based the white Jesus off of. And I mean, you could look this up historically, and there's a 12th century painting from Egypt that's considered to be the oldest painting of the Messiah and the apostles. And he's a darker complexion, right? It says that he has feet of brass and hair of wool. Okay, that doesn't describe a person of lighter complexion. But I mean, I don't know, man. What do you think about this? I think we came pretty full circle.
Well,
It's our
basically,
longest podcast yet.
what I fucking love about you is just bouncing ideas off of you, and I've had like a lot of this weighing on me recently. Is that the whole concept of Yahshua ben Yosef is that he was born of Mary, right? But it was God that just blew his beans up Mary's fanny, and then boom, magic baby. Um, which is fine. Like I have no issue with that, but nobody ever stops to consider the fact that who was Mary's family, right?
So
Like
Mary
Mary had
actually
parents
comes
and
from the Hebrew word.
grandparents and great great grandparents,
Yeah.
but like, is that what people are talking about with the Merovingian? Because the Merovingian bloodline is saying that we are descendants of Christ, but unless you want to have a discussion about how many times like Christ blew his beans up into like a bunch of different random broads or whatever, what we're really talking about is that Mary's family also made children, right? So anybody who thinks they're Merovingian, which I think is like it's like a big thing in Italy of all places. Like what are we talking about here?
Well, so I mean, the thing is Mary came from a Hebrew word Mariam, which means mother. Joseph, Yosef, actually came from the Comitian people, Set, who is Typhon. Okay, Set, who is an adversary. So, okay, so you got the virgin and you got the adversary as the stepfather, who from these two raised the ultimate spiritual being who came from the one. Okay, it's all an allegory, basically, pointing out to other references and other text, other scriptures from other cultures. Is why I'm saying that you can't just go from the Bible. A lot of these are tied together. So Mary, see, I don't see the importance of Mary the mother. There's like literally no importance to her, I feel, because when we're talking about M, the 33, right? The symbol, right? The Torah, all of that from the book. When you turn the Chicago Bull symbol over and there's a figure reading a book with 3 and 3 on each side, the 33. 33 represents a couple things. It represents the Kundalini serpents going up your 33 vertebrae of your spine, represents Mary Magdalene. So what do you think Eminem's trying to tell you? The rapper and the candy, Mary Magdalene. Okay.
Also, Orion
Because it's the
and the
33.
three wise men.
Yeah. Who were Zoroastrian priests.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's more important about the Mary Magdalene aspect of it. And, you know, we can get into this in another podcast because there's a lot more I want to get into with Michelangelo and his Gnostic beliefs and things he did with some of his sculptures and paintings.
Yeah.
That he hit at that because I think we're reaching a pretty good time. I mean, we're well over 2.5 hours.
And that's even after we had the hiccup. So we're basically at like 3.5 hours. But yeah, dude.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. I'll let you chop it up. Everybody else, for all of our 27 listeners, if we even have that many, please leave us comments. Please be guests on our shows. We would love to interact with you. Just send a like, send a subscription, whatever. And we'll just keep doing this, and we hope that people enjoy it in the meantime.
Yeah, we have a couple people lined up that we want to get on here right now that I think some of the listeners are going to really enjoy their stories or their perspectives. So we do have something cooking for you guys. And, hopefully we get to that interdimensional blink soon too. I know we've been promising it, but hopefully.
You just let me know. I'll get started right now and making all that shit because I'm excited. But yeah, merch and all kinds of fun things to follow. And in the meantime, thank y'all, love y'all, need y'all. We'll see you on the other side.
Bye, guys.